My guest today on Talking Jazz is Howard Levy from Chicago. Great pianist, harmonica player, composer, just somebody I've been looking up to for a long time. So it's an honor to have him today and talk about his music and his process. And we'll see what we'll talk about. So welcome, Howard.
Thank you, Monika. Great to see you.
I know some about you because I'm pretty close being in Indiana, you being in Chicago, and have witnessed a lot of the music making. Tell us a little bit about how you came, especially to the harmonica, but also piano and organ, and what drew you to this music.
Well, I started out playing piano when I was about 8.5 years old, and I took classical piano lessons, went to the Manhattan School of Music on Saturdays for 4 years, where I studied piano and sort of basic music theory in a class. The piano was individual, and so I learned a tremendous amount. But even before I went there, I started improvising. So it was just something I did from the third week of my first piano lessons with a private teacher. As soon as I put my two hands together, the third week of lessons, I started making stuff up. And my mom walked in the room and said, "What are you playing? That doesn't sound like what the teacher gave you." I said, "Oh, I'm just playing my music." I guess it's just something that comes naturally to me, improvising, composing things that sound coherent from a young age. And then it was just a matter of how hard I wanted to work at that side of things once I started discovering other kinds of music. The harmonica came about through my interest in blues. So after I stopped taking classical piano lessons, I started listening to, rock and roll and stuff that was on the radio. Of course, back then, this is a long time ago, all sorts of stuff was on the radio. And I think the first jazz I heard on the radio was Ramsey Lewis, The In Crowd, which was a hit song. It was played, the same radio stations that would play Jimi Hendrix would also play Ramsey Lewis, Al Hirt. So you're hearing jazz without even realizing you're hearing jazz when you're a kid listening to the radio. But then blues. I had a friend who had some Chicago blues albums, and he played these things for me, and I had never heard anything like that growing up, because I grew up in New York. And New York didn't have really a blues scene. It was just a very different kind of a city from Chicago. I just loved this blues music, especially the harmonic. And then my friend taught himself how to play harmonica and sounded really good in about a month or so. So I thought, why don't I go get a harmonic? So I went to Manny's Music on West 48th Street, and I plopped down my $2.25 for Marine Band harmonica in the key of G. I asked the guy, what key should I get? And he said, the G is the lower one. And so I got the G. To make a long story short, I gradually figured out how to bend notes, which is like the whole thing about playing the Mundharmonika, as you call it in Germany. It's a German invention, right? Invented to play German folk music. And so there's a key that's written on the instrument that is the key that the Germans think you should play in. That's what it was made for. It has the notes of the major scale in the second octave. And they left out some of the notes in the first octave to be able to get the 1 and the 5 chord. What they didn't realize is that leaving out these notes created this ability to bend the pitches of the notes between the higher and lower pitches. And so when the instrument got to America in the late 19th century, black blues players discovered that you could play it in the key a fifth higher than what was written on the instrument, or the key of the inhale. So it's a G and a D7. So if you play it in D, you immediately get the D7 chord, actually a ninth. And then you can all this stuff that the Germans of the early and mid-19th century had no idea that they had designed into this instrument. It's the greatest accident of musical design that I can even think of. And so they unknowingly invented the world's greatest blues instrument.
I think I had no idea.
Yeah, and this is, so all I wanted to do was play blues, because on the piano, you can't bend notes. I loved what Ramsey Lewis did. And Horace Silver, they made it sound about as bluesy as you can make a piano sound, but there's nothing like that. And being able to carry it with you in your pocket instead of going to a 800-pound instrument somewhere that you hope is in tune, So I always had the music with me. Like I said, it's a matter of how hard you want to work at it, and was writing my first jazz tunes and trying to play jazz with my friends. And there I was a freshman at Northwestern University, and simultaneously with first week I was at school is when I figured out how to bend my first note. And I also auditioned for the jazz band on piano, even though I wasn't in the music school. And I got the chair because I swung and I could solo and all this stuff, even though I didn't really know like the names of any chord beyond a ninth. I had never seen an official jazz chart. I didn't know what the modes were, but I had been listening so intently for like a year or so. And especially growing up in New York, I discovered the music, and then I went to all the clubs, which they let me in, even though I was not 18. So I got to go to the Vanguard and the Village Gate and all these places and hear all the greatest musicians, jazz musicians in the world. So I had this jazz inspiration and this blues thing happening at the same time. So it was just a matter of time before I realized I wanted to play more on the harmonica than just blues licks. So, this song, Sandy, I'm playing simultaneously on the harmonica and the piano. I have my keyboard here. What happened is I started realizing that as I tried to find notes that were missing on this instrument, I realized I was visualizing the piano keyboard in my mind. That's what most of us do. I'm sure you do the same thing. When you're thinking about a melody, you see the keys. And the harmonica is totally invisible to the person playing it. There's no involvement with the hands at all, or the eyes. You can't see it. And so to get beyond the basics of what's there, to be able to go all that stuff, I'm the first person to be able to do, required a knowledge of the piano. That's how it all started. I don't know if you want to talk about my techniques.
No, that's great. I mean, by now, everybody's curious, how does it sound like with the harmonica and the piano together? I mean, that's several things that regular people can't even do. Play chromatic on the harmonica, then play both instruments together.
It was something that I really wanted to do in the studio this way, because there's other tunes on that CD which I overdubbed harmonica on, or I just played harmonica, no piano. But this one, it has a certain feeling when you play the two instruments together, especially the moodiness of this tune. I didn't want to do it as an overdub. I wanted it to be organic, and I was lucky to be playing with two fantastic musicians, Ernie Adams on drums, who immediately established this totally cool groove, and the great Larry Gray on bass.
Right, and this came out in 2009 on the Chicago session, and it's available through your website and common sources. Yeah, well, let's do that. Let's be in awe. Let's listen to Sandy with Howard Levy on piano and harmonica simultaneously with Larry Gray and Ernie Adams on the Chicago sessions released in 2009. That was Sandy from the Chicago Sessions, a 2009 release from Howard Levy, featuring Larry Gray and Ernie Adams and Howard on piano and harmonica simultaneously. So Howard is my special guest, and we'll keep talking here about the music. And the cool and fun thing we get today is that he can also demonstrate it, all these little tidbits and how he does it. We just learned how you figured out how to play the harmonica in a new way, which opened up a whole new world. You know, I often get teased being from Germany and my name being Monika, and the harmonica. So, you know, also talking about Europe, the next release that we go to is actually with a Slovenian guitarist and composer, Salomon. So you have a lot of relationship to European players too, and often go tour there. Tell us a little bit about this relationship in this recording.
We had been trying to set something up for several years because I toured a lot in Europe, a lot of touring from the mid-90s, doing things for German radio in Baden-Baden, a thing called the New Jazz Meeting that they used to have. Then I toured a lot with a Lebanese oud player named Rabbi Abu Khalil and did 2 CDs with him, fascinating music, blend of Middle Eastern and jazz, and also Michael Riesler, who's an avant-garde, a German bass clarinet player and composer. We have a trio with this fantastic French accordion player, Jean-Louis Martinier. I'm very comfortable being in Europe and playing with Europeans, and so Samo invited me to do a duo recording with him in Maribor, Slovenia, and it finally came about, and we recorded at this beautiful studio, mostly his compositions, but also some of mine, and this is a collaborative piece. That's why I put it on here. Our minds really melded, and he's just a fantastic guy, very incredibly interesting. He teaches literature at the university there, as well as being an amazing guitar player and a great composer, and he collaborates with lots of other musicians, American and European. This tune, we kind of constructed it together in the studio based off a sketch that I did, and enlarged the sketch and recorded it. We didn't have to teach it to any other members of the band. And then we toured together the following year, along with a percussionist, great Slovenian percussionist who studied in India. You know, Europe is just full of these amazing musicians that Americans don't know anything about. I think that it has enlarged my musical vocabulary and my whole view of the world, touring over there as much as I've done for the last 15 years.
And that's fascinating perspective. You know, overall, the American culture is just dominant all over the world, and rightfully so. But what happens is that very little can come in from the outside. And we're often here, people are not aware of all the amazing things that are going on somewhere else.
Yes, it really was a tremendous eye-opener for me to start touring in Europe in the mid-90s, experiencing things I didn't know about, and especially back then, how much government funding there was behind the arts. It's so different from the way things are here. You go into a German state radio station and it's just like everything state of the art, and they really care about the music. And it's like in America, good luck trying to play real music on a commercial radio or TV station. It's almost never happens. And so over there, especially then, it was just a total eye-opener at how much the government and the individual states in Germany seemed to want to promote creativity. It was just a whole other thing.
In Austria, it's in the constitution that the state is supposed to support the arts. And in Germany, the state funding for the arts is about 95%, which is about the opposite that is here.
Oh my God. Yeah, America, it's good luck. Maybe it's like a friend of mine used to say, it builds character to struggle so hard.
Makes you tough if you have to work so hard. There's probably a happy medium somewhere in between that we could strive for, but let's listen to it. So it's aptly entitled Our Tune, yes, because you two wrote it together.
A lot of it's in 7/8 or 7/4 actually, but sort of divisions of 7/8. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 1. Just this patterns that I had on the harmonica. Stuff like that. Just things that I sketched out while I was on a plane. Or that's the beauty of, when you travel, you see new things and stuff shakes up your worldview, and you just, make little sketches and come up with new ideas.
And that's proven to be true, that those of us who travel enriches your creativity because you see things and you see new things and new ways of engaging. That's the cool thing about the East European traditions too, the odd meters and some of these different approaches. Good luck marching to this one. This is called Our Tune. It's on the release Peaks of Light on Samo Records. So this is the guitarist recording label, recorded 2018 and released then. The duo between Howard Levy and Samo Solomon. Enjoy! Green Mule in Chicago is an absolute treasure, and everybody who ever gets to Chicago should go there. So after we experience the duo, we're going to go in a very large ensemble, and it's the Latin side of Howard, and that's something to know too, the variety of styles that you encompass, from playing duo with a Slovenian guitarist to having a large authentic Latin ensemble, to go tour with Bella Fleck and mix the bluegrass and country traditions somehow with jazz. I mean, there's no styles boundaries, it seems.
You know, at a young age, I kind of had this vision when I was about 19 or so of a musician who could sort of tune into any channel, like kind of like the way you listen to shortwave radio in the old days, to have all of these different cultures and all their vocabularies available at any one time in your consciousness. I am tremendously inspired by the richness of all these different cultural musical traditions. Afro-Cuban music, Latin music, whatever you want to call it. Some people say salsa in New York, which was more like Puerto Rican dance music. It was something that, growing up in New York, it was all around me. Latin music is like the soul music of New York City, like the way Motown is in Detroit. Those sounds were just sort of everywhere. You'd hear it walking down the street, coming out of stores. When I went to the Manhattan School of Music, it was in Spanish Harlem. I'd hear people playing this stuff on the radio out of their apartments, you know, with their windows open on a warm day. When I moved to Chicago, I just really had a craving to play this music, and I joined this band in 1979, a 9-piece band. I played piano and harmonica and even mandolin on some tunes. And the band, very unusual, made up of mostly Americans, but the drummer, the founder of the band, Alejo Poveda, is from Costa Rica. And the percussionists, the two that are on this recording, are both Mexican-Americans who got deeply into Afro-Cuban music, Ruben Alvarez on timbales and Joe Rendon on congas. They're both fantastic players. I wrote this tune. It just sort of happened by accident. I was sitting between recording some jingles. You know, I used to do a lot of commercial recording in Chicago for cheap beer and bad pizza and airlines. And I was sitting at the studio piano, just waiting for the next session to start. And I just started improvising. I thought, oh, that's really cool. Oh, it's in 5. Oh, wow. It was a Latin tune in 5. And it evolved over the years. Gradually, I wrote a melody to it and wrote a bridge. The bass player, Eric Hochberg, who actually studied at Indiana years ago, came up with the tumbao bass line. That figure. So it's a slow 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Or 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 1, 2, 5, 2. It's 4, like 4, 4, and 6, 4, or 5, 2, however you want to say it. El Cojo, our bass player at the time when we started playing this, Rusty Taylor, who was part Puerto Rican, he said, hey, call it El Cojo, it means the limp, because it's not 4, 4, but it feels so natural. Sometimes people would get up and dance to it, not even realizing that it was in 5. And when I write in odd time meters, I always like them to feel natural and organic. It's something I've been doing since I was a teenager. The odd time meters appeal to me just equally with even time meters, you know?
Well, if you put 2 bars together, then you're in 10, then it gets even again. I guess you can dance to it.
It didn't bother people.
Right.
Just like, that's why I love Bulgarian music and Macedonian music so much, is that they're in odd time meters, but they just groove like crazy. Cevere de Chicago. We had to start calling ourselves, add the Chicago part, because there were 2 or 3 other bands in different cities called Cevere. It's Cuban street slang for like groovy and happening and copacetic, you know. And Alejo started it as a percussion ensemble in the mid-1970s, and then gradually started adding, you know, keyboard, guitar, bass, saxophone. Great Steve Eisen. Names Ernie Denoff on guitar, Eric Hochberg on bass, Chris Cameron, Chicago Hambone on the other keyboards, which are like Hammond organ and vintage synths and Fender Rhodes. Mark Olson, who used to play lead trumpet for Buddy Rich, on trumpet. And so everyone brings a world of experience in the way that Chicago musicians do, because we all play everything, you know, weddings and Jewish music and funk and soul and blues. And so it's a Latin jazz band with a totally original spin.
I had the opportunity to see that band live, and I can attest to how electrifying it is. Oh, yeah. The percussionist Ruben Alvarez is a great friend of mine, and he got me in, and I was in the green mode. I was just in awe. And then realizing how much it takes to arrange this. So if you have an ensemble of 9, you can jam for a while, but it's so much more exciting when you get these horn lines and they're arranged and coordinated. And it's just really, really really, really well done and really exciting to listen to.
It was a labor of love.
So, all right, so put on your dancing shoes and get into the groove in 5, but you won't even notice, I promise. And we'll listen to Alcohol. This is from the Secret Dream release from the Chevere de Chicago. 2005 it was released, but it's a group that's been together for a long time around Chicago and doing a lot of amazing things. Tight, here we go. That was El Cojo from Secret Dream with Shiver de Chicago, a 2005 release featuring a 9-piece ensemble. And you did me the honor earlier of telling all the names so I don't have to watch their pronunciation. So look them up, but all amazing Chicago players. We also got to talk a little bit about you being with Paquito de Rivera, subbing for Tito. I know you've been with so many great groups. I mean, a lot of people know you with Bella Fleck, and for a very, very long time, a lot of these, you mentioned a few of the European projects. Tell us a little bit about being a side person versus leading project. Do you have different approaches, or how do you do it? And of course, everybody's curious about hearing about Bella Fleck.
Sure. I'm happy to talk about that. Yeah, the Flecktones, that started with a jam session that Bela and I had in my hotel room at a folk festival in Canada, in Winnipeg, in 1987. And it just felt so great to play. And then he met Victor Wooten and his brother Roy, who's called Future Man, in Nashville when they first moved there. And Bela got asked to do a TV show in Louisville and called me and said, Howard, I want to try to put together a band with you and these two amazing musicians. And so we did the TV show. People flipped out. You can still see it online. It was called the Lonesome Pine Special. I think it was 1988. Yeah, we played Caravan and all sorts of other things. So we started the band. We recorded our first album, and Warner Nashville picked it up. We made a video that was seen a lot on VH1, and we were on all the major late-night talk shows, The Tonight Show with Johnny Carson and all these other shows. Arsenio Hall, I'm starting to remember it now. We started touring heavily. It was the first time I've toured that much in my life. It was like 120, 130 gigs a year, the time rehearsing in Nashville and recording albums. And I did it for about 3.5 years until the end of 1992. It was a band of musical equals, but Bela was the leader and he wrote most of the tunes. I didn't think of myself as a sideman. It was a band, and we all contributed unique, organic musical ideas and thoughts to this group. Four kindred spirits. I mean, what he was doing on the banjo, nobody had ever done before. To play it as a real instrument, and of course, he played great bluegrass. But then he was doing kind of what I was doing with the harmonica on the banjo, and expanding the vocabulary of the instrument into whatever. And he's a great composer, so the stuff he wrote very unique to any instrument. But the fact that he was doing it on the banjo made it even more unique. The sound of a banjo and a harmonica playing all this really advanced stuff never been heard before. And then you add in Victor's ridiculous bass playing, where he sounds like two people a lot of the time, and melodically and percussively, it's just incredible. And then the electronic drums, which are multi-layered, sounds like more than one person playing quite often. And then I'm playing, of course, piano as well, and simultaneously playing the two instruments at all our live gigs. It was a very wild, increasingly successful thing, but I quit because it became too much of the same thing for me after 3.5 years. And they just wanted to tour more and more. And I said, this is great, but I have a lot of other things I want to do, just to be myself and play all these different kinds of music and not just be a Flecktone. It felt limiting after, 400 gigs or whatever it was. And I said, I'll do it forever if you want to do like 60 or 70 shows a year. I'm your guy, But they wanted to tour like 150, 180, 200. It just didn't seem right for me. It wasn't where my heart was. When I left, that's when I started doing all this other, my Chevrolet passion, and also just play with all these other people in Europe and start new groups in America like Trio Globo. I toured with Kenny Loggins for a few years, which was actually a fantastic experience. Start my own record label and compose my harmonica concerto, the expanding musical universe. But the Flecktones really kind of kickstarted me into a much more publicly visible phase of my career. And also it was musically inspiring and builds up all the touring and having to be at your best every night, hundreds of times a year. This is something that you only get from this type of touring, this type of guerrilla touring. And like all the greatest jazz musicians of the past, and Charlie Parker and John Coltrane, Miles Davis, these guys played, 300 nights a year. Yeah, this is a tune I started writing, still playing with the Flecktones before I left. It was just something that came to me, and the form is very complex on this tune. It kind of folds back into itself. Weird. I mean, I do listen to lots of Brahms. I listen to a lot of classical music. But this tune, I worked on for years, and it has become kind of a through-composed composition for me. There's very little improvisation in the way that I play this. I have tried notating this piece several times. I am going to very soon really write the definitive notation, the solo piano version, very similar to this duo, and put it up for sale on my website. But Chris Siebold, the guitarist, he's an extraordinary musician. He has unlimited technique, incredible amount of soul. He memorizes everything incredibly well. He's just a natural talent. The talent is just coming out of every pore in this guy. And he's playing a steel resonator guitar, which is an instrument not often used for jazz. It's usually used for blues. It was invented in the early 20th century to make guitar sound loud enough to play with drums and horns. That's why, like, the banjo was a popular jazz instrument, the four-string banjo, the chunk, 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 because it was louder than the guitar. And so these guitars were an attempt to boost the volume of the guitar. They have kind of acoustic steel speakers built into them with little vents. We discovered this sound works really well with the harmonica and with the piano. It's just a wonderful sound. So whenever Chris and I play duo, he only uses this instrument. But Lips and Fingertips, I only perform as a duo with Chris. Even on our quartet gigs, the other guys leave the stage and we play this tune.
Yeah, but I still, I encourage everybody to, if you like something, find out the whole piece, the whole artwork, not just this single song. It usually belongs to a unit, and there's a reason why it belongs to a unit. So we'll get the treat of Lips and Fingertips. This is from the Art and Adrenaline recording with Chris Siebold and our guest Howard Levy. CD Baby is listed as the label 2018 to release it.
Balkan Samba Records, which is my own label. And you can buy any of my downloads or CDs at my website, which is levyland.com.
Go to levyland.com. That's the best way to support the artist. Here's Lips and Fingertips. Enjoy. That was Lips and Fingertips from the Art and Adrenaline recording with Chris Siebold duo. Our guest today is Howard Levy. He can talk to us about harmonica technique, or you can go take a lesson and learn it personally, especially.
That's right, folks. Especially now in this time of the pandemic, the internet has become the teaching source, the musical interaction source. And before all this happened, I was very fortunate to hook up with a fantastic company out of California called ArtistWorks. They have a virtual music campus with about 37 teachers, I think, in all different styles of music, really some of the greatest musicians in the world. I'm honored to be the harmonica teacher. They found this bass player named John Patitucci. Maybe you might have heard of him.
Occasionally, sometimes he hangs out with Chicoria.
Mike Marshall, Daryl Anger, Nathan East, George Whitty is the jazz piano teacher. They found some, and not standard kind of guys. Eric Marienthal's the saxophone teacher. These are like very cutting edge and creative artists, and a lot of them are originators of their own styles. The people who started this were not looking for generic. And so I'm just extremely proud of the harmonica school. You could just look up the website artistworks.com. It's one word. Right after I got off the road with John Prine, I was like, okay, now I really want to into playing jazz and playing my original tunes, and put together this band that eventually included Steve Eisen on tenor, along with Dave on trumpet, a whole bunch of different bass players and drummers depending on when we were playing. But on this recording, you'll hear the great Kelly Sill on bass and the great Paul Wertico on drums. Jeff Check was also bass player on several of the live tracks, a fantastic musician who left Chicago years ago. I actually found the original quarter-inch tape masters, 7.5 IPs, in the attic. The original guy whose studio we recorded at is still around, and I gave him the tapes, and he baked them in a convection oven to make sure the backing didn't come apart, from the tape. This was a problem at that time. And he transferred them to Pro Tools, to a digital format, rather. And I remastered them along with the cassette recordings. I had even forgotten I had written some of these tunes. But we were playing our butts off back then in these little bars in Chicago with very little attention from anyone outside the people who were there. And I had forgotten what we sounded like. I was playing in clubs probably 5 nights a week, all these different kinds of music, with Chevrolet, the guys at Andy's, Jazz at Noon, No Bad Vibes, with the Balkan Rhythm Band, which is another group I put together to play Bulgarian and Macedonian music, and just so many different things, and living and breathing music. And this is a little snapshot of this band at this place in time in 1980.
So it's called 22 Bars, and you can absolutely feel that energy. This is just get together and feel good, no bad vibes, play off of each other. It's amazing energy, and it's great that you were able to. It sounds good too. The remastering
Yes.
done really well. It doesn't sound like cassette tapes at all.
No, this tune is actually from a reel-to-reel tape, and I had a choice to make of the cassette that I had from back then that the guy at the studio gave me, or this reel-to-reel, and I thought the sound was a little richer on the reel-to-reel tape, so we remastered.
Keep that all in mind and go seek out Howard's website, Levyland. There's so much more on it. All these wonderful recordings are all available. There's a book coming out. There's instructional DVDs. There's the school. There is lessons and so much to learn. And I really appreciate you taking time today and sharing so much with us, including all the harmonica techniques. Now we can all go practice.
My instructional video, Out of the Box Volume 1, I said it comes with a 30-year guarantee. If you practice for 30 years, you can play this music.
And your 10,000 hours and 30 years, and you will make it.
I'm doing a regular Thursday night broadcast, a live stream. It's called Thursday Night Happening. I just want to let people know that all the money we raise that's donated goes to the Greater Chicago Food Depository, because there's so many people without jobs right now who are desperate, no money to be able to afford food. And so I'm doing this thing, and I'm playing different kinds of music every week, and interviewing me and asking me this. So you see, I play so many different things. And so that's what I've decided the show is. It's just going to be all these different sides of my musical universe.
tune in on Thursdays to live streams and enjoy that. I mean, that's something we're all developing right now, but yeah, so support each other, and that's a great cause. Well, thank you, Howard, for spending the time today, and we'll go out 22 bars. This is From the Waltz, Volume 2, with the No Bad Vibes NBV Band, as performed with Dave Urban on trumpet, Steve Eisen on saxes, Kelly Still on this one on bass, Paul Vertigo on drums, Chicago Jazz. Here we go. Thank you for listening to Talking Jazz. My guest today was harmonica player, pianist, composer, educator Howard Levy. Tune in every Thursday at 11 a.m. and Tuesdays at 7 p.m. on WETF South Bend, Indiana, or find us online at wetfthejazzstation.org. Previous recordings of interviews and music are also available on the Monika Herzig YouTube channel under Talking Jazz. Find MonikaHerzig and subscribe. Thank you for listening.